Then there's stuff after the trade that came out about Kyrie Irving actually being excited that James Harden was traded because he actually was looking forward to him being out of town, and all of these other little crazy rumors swirling around.
Hello and welcome to the Friday, February 11th edition of the TV on Basketball Podcast with your host, TV. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Thank you for clicking on to watch or listen to today's episode. Before we start, I do have to plug my other platforms. Remember to follow at TV on basketball on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for updates in the podcast and for other great content. If you're on YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. And for all my podcast listeners, remember to subscribe and leave a review if you're on Apple. And that's for my Spotify, Anchor, and Podbean listeners. Just show your support in any way possible. I highly, highly appreciate it. You know why we're here today. We are here to talk the trades. I love the NBA, man. I absolutely just love the NBA. Crazy trade deadline, crazy trades happening throughout the week. And that's going to be the main focus of today's show, talking about that. Also talking about the NBA Allstar Draft. But of course, with an episode of this magnitude, I couldn't do this alone. I got to bring in my guy, Jalon, from the Hoop Talk podcast. What's going, my guy?
I'm chilling, bro. Very excited to talk about these trades, bro. Insane day. And the crazy part was we talking about it on the pre-pod. Most of this kicked off around noon, bro. So most of this was happening back to back to back. So it's finally time for us to sit down and get into all of this madness.
There is a lot, and a lot to break down. And we are here. We're gonna strap up. We're ready to talk some trades. And like I said, we're also going to be finishing it off with a bit of the NBA All-Star Draft, which also happened last night, or as of recording, like half an hour ago. But yeah, there's a lot to get into. I don't want to hold you guys any longer. Let's get right into this. And of course, actually, no, before we go on, I gotta show my guys some respect. Jalon has a new Instagram page, Basketball Genius. Go check him out. He's trying to do like his own individual stuff. He's got the articles running. If you want to like just speak on that really quickly, you could do that before we get into the.
Oh yeah, man. I appreciate that, bro. Yeah, I'm just trying to get into my article writing bag. I'm trying to get a little bit better in this journalism space. Also doing a little bit of TikTok stuff over there. Basketball Genius 1 on Instagram and on TikTok. It's one of those things where I'm just trying to explore a different realm of myself when it comes to this basketball space. Funny content, more analytical stuff over there, as well as a couple of little small things that are coming around the corner too. Thank you, man. Thank you for the plug, bro.
Yeah, most definitely check him out. And of course, the Hoop Talk podcast, check him out. Ryan wasn't able to make it tonight, but next week we have a special episode planned, and it's gonna be definitely fun for All-Star Weekend. We're definitely gonna be getting into that. And yeah, that's about it for all the plugging. Let's get right into this trade. And bro, you already know where we're starting. The trade that we didn't think would happen. At least I didn't think it was gonna happen. I thought like it was still a flash in the pan, but the blockbuster deal went through. The Brooklyn Nets receiving Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, an unprotected first-round pick in this year, and a top 8 protected second-round pick in 2027 in exchange for Mr. James Harden and Paul Millsap. That's a lot. That was a crazy, crazy deal. The deal of the day. Jalon, I'm throwing it to you. Initial thoughts, any type of just your feelings on this trade.
Man, I mean, the first thing that came up for me was like, wow, the trade of the century. I was blowing group chats up. I had to show my girlfriend the screenshot from Bleacher Report of the jersey swaps. I was just blown because, of course, we've been getting reports all week, right? If you talk to Steve Nash, if you let it be based off what Steve Nash told us, you would have thought that James Harden was not even close to touchable come this trade deadline. But then, as the day continues, there's a lot of stuff coming out from Adrian Wojnarowski about James Harden wanting to be traded, but not wanting to express a trade request because he doesn't want backlash. Then there's stuff after the trade that came out about Kyrie Irving actually being excited that James Harden was traded because he actually was looking forward to him being out of town, and all of these other little crazy rumors swirling around. And so with all the madness around this trade, focusing in on the basketball aspect of it, TV, I want to get your perspective on this. I have a hard time picking a loser in this exchange because when you look at Brooklyn, yes, if you look at Ben Simmons on face value for what we've seen from him, Yes, he doesn't give them any floor spacing, but he does help them on the defensive end. They picked up Seth Curry, who makes up shooting wise for Ben Simmons, and I would argue that at least having Andre Drummond is better than the DeAndre Jordan minutes they were once upon a time playing center right behind, right behind or ahead of Nicholas Claxton. So I mean, we already know what's up with the Philly side, right? You get
Yeah,
James Harden with Joel Embiid. The pick and roll is vicious. So
yeah,
I'm not sure who actually loses this trade.
yeah. There's okay. Before we get to the winners and losers, I just want to say thank God the Ben Simmons saga is finally complete. Honestly, all summer long, 7 months, over the last 7 months, all of this bull about Ben Simmons. Is he getting traded? Is he not? Tired of talking about him as content creators. We are tired of talking Ben Simmons. And now this mess is over. That's off my chest. Let's get back. Let's get into this. The Brook, yeah, honestly, I completely agree with you. There are no losers in this trade. From the Philly side of things, they got their guy. Morey was holding out saying, look, we could trade Ben Simmons for McCollum. We could trade Ben Simmons for anything the Kings got us. But we're waiting. We're waiting. And we're waiting. And who did he hold out for? A top 10 player in the league. Now you basically got two of them on the same roster, James Harden, Joel Embiid, who's having another MVP level season. And you already know, you talked about it. The pick and roll is going to be deadly. They finally got that outside creator that they were missing when Ben Simmons was out. And then this guy can hit the three. You didn't have to give up a Tyrese Maxey, a Tobias Harris. You still got a good team around them. I mean, this trade just took the 76ers, who are currently, I mean, they're still having a good year. Let's not get it twisted. They're number 5 in the East, even without Ben Simmons. But adding James Harden just takes them from here to here. And we already knew like what James Harden's all about. He was kind of, I mean, we talked about it in the press conferences, he wasn't looking like himself, kind of giving you that Houston Rockets feel by the time that he was leaving from back then. The 76ers know what they're getting. They're getting a bona fide superstar. They got their guy beside Joel Embiid. And if you saw Joel Embiid's Instagram post, the one with the RP, the haters, he's been waiting for this trade for a long time. He's been definitely asking for this, and they finally got it. On the net side of things, you went through it. Ben Simmons, he doesn't have to be relied on to score. This guy could play the best defense on that team, play the Draymond Green role, just facilitate, get rebounds. You got KD, you got Kyrie Irving. They can get you a bucket. They can get you a bucket. Seth Curry can hit those threes. They still have Patty Mills who could hit those threes. And then, of course, on the inside, you're good with the rebounding now. You got Andre Drummond, one of the elite rebounders in basketball. Of course, he's been showing out this year as well, being a good interior defender. Honestly, man, there are really no losers in this trade. And like honestly, these are the type of stuff, man. We've been waiting for this. We didn't think this was gonna happen in the offseason. I'm just glad it went through, and I'm just glad that we got to see that monster trade on trade deadline day.
Yeah, man. I mean, just to kind of like, finish up in terms of this trade in particular, I mean, this was the trade that everybody thought wasn't going to happen, right? You get to the trade deadline and you look at all the teams that didn't really have a lot of money. You look at the teams that did have a lot of money. Actually, the Knicks, for example, were one of those teams that had bread on them and didn't make any moves at the deadline. And you just kind of wondered whether or not anything really dynamic was going to happen because of everybody being cap strapped this year.
Yeah.
Well, clearly the Sixers didn't care.
Yeah.
Clearly Daryl Morey had something in his bag. Shout out my friend Miles Johnson. He's been saying for
Oh yeah,
months,
wow.
years even, that this was in the works, and now it's come to fruition. It's one of those things that I think is going to be so interesting for the dynamic of the East in particular because TV, both of our favorite teams are in this mix, man. And
Yeah.
we're going to have to go through a gauntlet.
Yeah.
I think honestly, the East just got even more competitive
Mhm.
just with these two teams getting better overnight. It's insane how the entirety of this entire conference can be that much better on the overall landscape of the NBA just by one trade. Because now these teams look dangerous, and the rest of the league is going to be put on notice.
Yeah, no, 100%. And before we move on to the next trade, I do want to have your thoughts on this. I mean, we know the thing about with Ben Simmons, him holding out the entire year. Now he goes to a team. He finally gets to play for the first time this season. The Harden, of course, finally going to the 76ers. I mean, looking at the Brooklyn Nets side, especially specifically, Kyrie Irving. We don't know whether the mandates are going to change or not with with New York State or whatever. Ben Simmons, we know how much he can like kind of like change like the course of a locker room. I mean, they have the talent on paper. Like I don't know why. There's just something a little bit inside me just has a feeling that one little thing and this whole thing can implode for the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, do you have that kind of concern as well going into this?
I mean, I think I would be a little bit more concerned if some of the reports weren't what they were, right? So I think there's already been a lot of reports from Rich Paul and that camp about Ben Simmons being in contact with Kevin Durant, talking about the idea of them having work to get into, but obviously that he's ready to play basketball. One thing that we don't have to worry about with Ben Simmons that we still have our worries with Kyrie on is that Ben Simmons is vaccinated. So we don't have to worry about the issue of him being a part-time player as well. And truthfully, whether Ben Simmons showed it on his face on a consistent basis or not, Ben Simmons was a hard working, hard playing player for the 76ers. Now, granted, you can make arguments about his ability to elevate his game, right? Everybody will go to the jump shot. But in terms of playing hard for 35 plus minutes a night during the regular season and even during the postseason, it's hard to argue that argue against the idea that he's a high energy player. I think if you put a high energy guy on this kind of team, they've already got the pieces. TV. You already talked about it earlier. Seth Curry being added to this team as well, another veteran locker room presence. Patty Mills already being on the squad. This squad is a lot more veteran built around a guy like Ben Simmons in ways that Philly never was
Yeah.
for him. And I think the structure of that is going to help him a lot in ways that I don't think he's going to be the Terrell Owens team obliterator the way
Yeah.
people seem like he's going to come into this second half of the season acting like. I think it's going to be a good fit for him.
Yeah, and then it really does help that he's a number three option now at this point in terms of the offensive
Mhm.
end. You got the guys to make up the points that you're going to be missing. This guy could just can just focus on what he does best, being one of the best defenders in the league, one of the best playmakers in the league. He could focus on that. On paper, it looks good, but I don't know, man. These personalities, they just just a little bit
Yeah,
worry me.
for
These
sure.
personalities, but still, crazy trade. Happy this happened. Yes, no more Ben Simmons. Let's go. Let's just not. I'm so tired. That Ben Simmons thing really had a toll on me. It was so annoying. But let's move on to the next trade. Another trade. I mean, there's a lot of trades that happened today, but also there's some crazy trades that happened throughout the week. And another big one that we are going to discuss here today was a trade I didn't even know this guy was available. The fact that he was traded, I don't know like how this happened, but the Indiana Pacers were able to move off Domantas Sabonis, Jeremy Lamb, Justin Holiday, and a 2027 second round pick for Buddy Hield, Tristan Thompson, and Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton from the Sacramento Kings. I mean, I'm a huge fan of him. I am a massive fan of Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, the NBA community was up in arms of this trade for the Kings. Like, what are you doing, Jalon? What was your thoughts on this trade?
So my thoughts initially were, why would you move the guy that everybody is invested in, including the guy in terms of the franchise itself? That guy is invested back into you,
Yeah,
right? This is a guy who, based off all the rumors around NBA draft night, he basically coaxed his way into going to the Sacramento Kings. Now, how many draft picks, TV, do you think over the last couple of years have finessed their way into being drafted by the Kings? TV, this is the same team that on
yeah,
a nightly basis, me and you have agreed to always bet against. And you're talking about guys being willingly open to being drafted by this team. The other thing is, I've talked to Kings fans before, especially in the last week or two, with the fact that I've been after a couple of their guys. Harrison Barnes is one of those guys that, as a Bulls fan, I've had my eye on for a
yeah,
couple of weeks now. They all thought De'Aaron Fox was the guy. If anybody in terms of that guard tandem was going to get split up, because they both play better without each other. The statistics both show it. They're
yeah,
both averaging at least like 5 or 6 points better when one of the two is off the floor. So the stats show that they needed to be split up in order to maximize the most out of whoever they kept. But it seemed like the guy was Fox. And they had offers from like the Knicks. They had offers from, I think, New Orleans. They had a couple of offers out there. And of all teams, Indiana, who's in full blow up mode, gets the ultimate retooling, right? Because you
yeah,
get Tristan Thompson, who you're probably gonna buy him out. You have Tyrese Halliburton, who can be a cornerstone guy for you, next to some of the other dudes that they have, especially if they plan on keeping Miles Turner now, which was something out in
yeah,
reports. And Buddy Hield, you can use him as a trade chip.
Yeah.
So now you have ammo. Like now you've single-handedly helped the Indiana Pacers retool by really not making your team any better if you're Sacramento. Like getting some DeMontis Sabonis is the Kings version of doing something just to do it. That's what I've been trying to say this last couple of days. Is it seems like the Kings simply grabbed the most mid player possible, right? He's made 2 All-Star teams and I know at least one of those we went and said, he's not really all-star. This felt like kind of like a default. He's kind of a de facto all-star.
Yeah.
And you grab him up, he's gonna give you 20 and 10, but is he going to affect your long-term future as a playoff team? He didn't even do that in Indiana.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know, man. Look, Tyrese Halliburton, I feel sorry for him because he was actually committed to that franchise, but he is gonna do so well in Indiana. I think he's gonna kill it over there.
Yeah, no, 100%. And just before I get to this trade, I mean, Tyrese Halliburton was at Pacers practice this morning. He was asked, like, is it hard to trust an organization now, knowing that you put your heart and soul into the Kings organization, and they just shipped you off just like that? And you could tell by the look on his face, he's cheesed. He's
Yeah.
so cheesed. And he's like, look, I like it's a business, the business is a business, but I gave my heart and sweat to that team, and they treated me like garbage, just throwing me out just like that. So I really do feel for Tyrese. He is a genuine guy. I've heard so many interviews from him. This guy just feels like the ultimate kind of NBA nerd. He like knows so many things about the game, extremely smart, and from all reports, he was committed to the Kings, as you said. But business is a business, and the Kings are in the business of the play-in tournament. That's the business that they want to be a part of, because that's what the trade is. They want to be in the play-in tournament, and I'm going to tell you, Kings, right now, the play-in tournament is not the playoffs. So even if
No,
you
sir.
if you move big, if you lose in the play-in tournament, we're not counting that as a playoff performance. I do not care, Kings fans. And look, it's been like what, I think 16, 17 years now since 2006 or whatever. They didn't make the playoffs. This trade, this feels like a trade this just feels like such a Kings trade. Like you said, this is just
Exactly.
such a Kings trade. You bring in Domantas Sabonis, and I'm a bit higher than Domantas Sabonis as I am of some of the people who are out there. I do think that he is like a lot better than people, make it out to be, especially people coming out of the trade like, oh, Domantas Sabonis, like really, that's all. I'm like, he's better than people think. I think he's even better than De'Aaron Fox, like at the moment is with the Kings, even a few years back. Probably the best player they've had since Boogie. I'll say that for sure. But at the end of the day, Sabonis ain't moving that needle. He is not moving that needle. I know he's still pretty young. I mean, what's crazy is like people like I think I don't know in my mind that Sabonis is like 27, 28. He's only like 25 years old. He doesn't feel like it, but he's still pretty young. But at the same time, you have De'Aaron Fox who wants to play fast. Sabonis, a slow big who wants to mug it up inside. He's not going to help on the defensive end. It's more offense for the Kings, which has never really been the problem for them. It's them trying to defend the other team. They're doing this to be a part of the play-in tournament, and let's be honest, it's not even guaranteed at this point. We're going to get into the CJ McCollum trade later on, and the Pelicans are currently ahead of them in the standings, and I don't think really they're going to give up the number 10 spot. But Sabonis is good. I don't want to go this and like just like bashing Sabonis because he is a good player, but he would be best fit for a contender who needs a third or fourth guy. He is the perfect role for that. You do not throw him on the Kings and expecting him, take us to the playoffs, because that's not what's going to happen. That's just not what's going to happen. I know they got the win over the Timberwolves the other night. It kind of gave the Kings fans a little bit of serotonin there, but let's be honest, long term, this ain't it. Tyrese Halliburton, the fact that the Pacers got him, a franchise cornerstone, for giving away for trading someone that you're going to trade away anyway. Big W for the Pacers. They've been making, honestly, like even like when they traded Caris LeVert, I didn't even mind the package they got back for Caris LeVert, which we're going to get into a little bit later too. But they won this trade. They got the franchise cornerstone. The Kings are going to be at least going for the play-in tournament. I don't know, man. It's such a Kings trade, and I want to defend them. I'm trying to find ways to defend them, but I can't. And it's not true to myself because I know how much Tyrese Halliburton. Like I thought he was the one guy who was untouchable. He was the one guy who I thought was untouchable for the Kings. They trade him away. The business is the business of the game is brutal. Tyrese Halliburton learned that the hard way in his second season in the NBA, which is unfortunate. But yeah, good job for the Pacers. The fact that you could do this and not even have to trade Miles Turner, like you said, it's a retool, like more than a rebuild. They got their guy. They don't have to tank too much to get the next guy to help like surround him with pieces. But yeah, good trade for the Pacers. The Kings, short term goodness, but even still, it's short term a 10 seed. That's about it. I don't see anything else much going past that. Any final thoughts?
I mean, the final thoughts that I have, bro, in terms of this trade is just, I just wonder. We talked about this on the pod the other day. Like, I just wonder if the Pacers, in order to complete a trade, that they actually wanted Tyrese instead of De'Aaron, and it was just simply that Sacramento said deal in that fact, right? It wasn't that De'Aaron was the untouchable and they were willing to give up Tyrese. It was more so the aspect that the Pacers, when they wanted to make an acquisition from Sacramento, the target was always Tyrese Halliburton, and Sacramento just let themselves get fleeced. Like, I think that, like, at the end of the day, that's genuinely my new new belief on this whole thing, especially when you see like his fit moving forward, right? I obviously Malcolm Brogdon couldn't get traded this year, but I still think they
Yeah.
would be a pretty decent fit next to each other. Chris
Mhm.
Duarte is pretty solid in terms of this moving forward. Keeping Miles Turner and thinking about the idea of building around him is something that's an interesting thought moving forward. They still have TJ Warren, who they can maybe do something with, or find a way to make a move with that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in a situation where you have to wonder if Indiana was swinging for the fences and Sacramento simply just kind of let their guard down, which is again such a Kings thing to do. So
Very,
yeah, man,
very
I don't
much.
know, bro. Just a bizarre trade. Even on ESPN, the name of the article for the trade is Sacramento did what examining this bizarre Kings Pacers deal. Everyone knows it, bro. The Kings sold.
Yeah, they sold. They 100% sold. And one more thought before we move on to the next trade. Woj said this right after the trade was being was made. The whole league was in shock. The entire league was in shock. If they knew Tyrese Halliburton was on the block, you don't think you can get a better package than Sabonis?
Dude, man.
Teams would like. There's so many teams that'd be like, "Yo, Tyrese Halliburton, this guy who is like honestly this year's having a career type year, the guy who honestly like is like one of the smartest guys in the league at such a young age. I'll trade a lot of draft capital. I'll trade, maybe like a superstar that's frustrated. They could have done something else, but no, they settled. I don't even know why they settled. There was no competition because no one else. There was no one else going for Tyrese Halliburton because
Oh,
because
man.
all the other teams in the league are smart. They thought that he was untouchable, and rightfully so. And the Kings are just like, no, Pacers, you can have him.
I
It's
don't get
it's
it, man.
it's it's, it's insane to me. It's just absolutely insane. I cannot believe it. Even right now, like I trust me. When I was thinking about it, I was like, is there any way I can defend the Kings here?
No
No,
way.
no way. Okay, let's move on to the next trade. I'm so cheap. And you like you mentioned earlier, you know I hate for the Kings. We do not bet on the Kings. Never do this. And
Mm-mm.
they just keep proving us every single night. Every
You
single
know,
night.
man.
I know it is what it is. Okay, next trade. We went on a lot for those two trades. Let's move on to the next one. Another, you would say, a kind of big time player, borderline star type player. CJ McCollum finally gets out of the Portland Trailblazers along with Larry Nance and Tony Snell in exchange for Josh Hart, Tomas Satoransky, Nickel Alexander Walker. Haha, we're gonna get to him later. Didi Luzada, am I pronouncing that right? I'm
Mm.
assuming yes. A 2022 first round pick, a second round pick in 2026, and a 2027 second round pick. CJ McCollum apparently also was a part of the boys' decision to trade him there. That was a preferred destination as well. To keep that in mind, Jalon, what are your thoughts on McCollum being the newest member of the New Orleans Pelicans?
Man, so I wonder about this move, just out of the mere fact that, without understanding Zion's health factor in all of this, it's hard to understand exactly where this team's trajectory is up next, right? Brandon Ingram is still on this team, one-time All-Star, definitely somebody worth keeping on the roster. I know a lot of people thought about the idea of trying to split him and Zion up, especially after Point Zion was a thing, but I think that they can coexist. I think picking up Larry Nance Jr. in this trade was huge too. He's going to miss some time due to injury, but I think he's a good fit long term for helping them defensively. You got to kind of wonder about that a little bit because we said the same thing about him being able to do that for Portland. But I do think that New Orleans has better defensive personnel from a potential standpoint than anything that Portland was walking around with. So I think that he might be a lot more serviceable on this team. And then CJ McCollum as a pickup, you went from once upon a time having Drew Holiday and Lonzo Ball on the team. So I think getting CJ McCollum at least brings you back to that level. More so in the Drew Holiday sphere, but there's still that lack of defense from the guard position that both guys they essentially gave up on, right? They traded Drew Holiday for essentially nothing, and they pretty much, as far as I'm concerned, considering they got Devontae Graham back, they pretty much gave away Lonzo to the Bulls. Now, thank you. As a Bulls fan,
Yeah.
not going to argue, but they basically gave Lonzo away only to end up with Devontae Graham. So I'm not really sure what CJ McCollum does for this team. It'll be interesting to see how he operates as a solo guard for the first time.
Yeah.
Look, man, does it bring them better? Does it bring them up in terms of the play-in picture? In terms of this season, definitely. Does it maybe make them a little bit more of a dangerous team in the West, especially if Zion's healthy and you have those three guys being Ingram, McCollum, and Zion together? Of course. But like David Griffin really needs to ask himself, like, does this raise the ceiling of this team that much though? And to me, I think the answer is no. But like, what do you think? Because I don't think it did very much for them.
Yeah, this CJ McCollum trade, honestly, it's a good trade as like in concept. In concept, the fit of him, Brandon Ingram, and Zion is cool. It's a cool concept. You got the outside perimeter guy in CJ McCollum, who is, in my opinion, even an underrated passer. I think if as a lead guard, he could still like average, 6, 7 assists a game. You got Brandon Ingram, that scoring wing, and then Zion, who could just dominate inside. That's good, especially for the spacing of the team. But Zion, like, there's still so many question marks with him. Is he going to come back this year? The Pelicans keep telling us that he is going to come back, but we are not 100% sure until. I mean, so it's one of those things where it's like, I believe it when I see it,
Right.
actually out on the court type of thing. And, they still got Jonas Valanciunas around. I think that their defense is still like very suspect, especially with a backcourt of Devontae Graham and CJ McCollum at the moment. I would like to fit Herbert Jones in there somewhere, but I don't. I mean, like when Zion comes back, obviously he's going to move to the bench. But and of course, Larry Nance will definitely have on the defense. But the defense is very questionable to me. The offense should score a lot of points, which I think, I guess that's the kind of the goal for the Pelicans, just try to outscore their teams every night. Which you have a good chance when you have Zion, who's can average near 30 points a game just inside the paint. You got Brandon Ingram can score on all three levels, basically a 25-point per game scorer, and also CJ McCollum, who has proven that he's a consistent 20 plus per game scorer. I mean, it's good in concept. You got some nice young pieces there as well to kind of balance out, the veterans and the youth. I think they have a good mix of that. But I'm gonna have to see it on the court to see for me to be like, okay, this is gonna work out. And we still not even gonna have a full picture of that until Zion Williamson comes back. Um, I know, like we talk a lot about the Pelicans because that is the big person of this trade. Them getting the star player.
Mhm.
On the Portland side of things, I mean, we're gonna talk about another trade later, which I think they got absolutely fleeced, like in another trade. But this one, not too bad, not too bad. But the fact they got away, they gave away Nickel Alexander Walker, I don't know, but but they still got Josh Hart. They got a first round pick. Sadaransky obviously is not gonna be a long term piece there, and Didi Luzada. Any thoughts on the Pacer side of things?
I mean, for Portland, I think the biggest thing for them is just the fact that they freed up so much money. I mean, one of the initial notes for the trade itself is they freed up about 60 mil in terms of cap space. They get all of those draft picks between this trade and the trade with the Clippers, like you mentioned earlier. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. I will argue that there was a bit of fleecing taking place there too, right? You gave two rotational players away. I know Rocco hasn't been playing that well this season, but
Yeah,
come on, man,
yeah,
that's kind of tough,
yeah,
especially because he's at least locked up long term.
yeah.
I mean, yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things where you just gotta wonder. But in terms of this trade, like I said, frees up a lot of money, get a lot of draft capital, and their thought process is to take all of this money and take all of this draft capital and use it to rebuild or retool, I guess, around Damian Lillard, who is pretty much dead set on staying there. Now, look, man, we're going to talk about a different trade involving the Washington Wizards that seems to be trying to do something similar to this. At least I think so in theory. I'm not even sure at this
Yeah.
point, but the idea of retooling, there's certain teams that are good at this, and there's
Yeah.
other teams that need to kind of get out while the iron strikes hot, right? This is one of those teams, especially with things waning in the offseason about potentially having to hand Damian Lillard an extension. It just felt like if there was any time where you were gonna get this done, it was now. And the
Yeah.
fact that it didn't happen, I don't know, man. I think Portland must know something that we don't, because outside of having committed word from Damian Lillard that he wants to be there, I don't know what else is convincing them to try to make this work.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you made a really good point. I mean, some teams can retool, some teams know how to retool. The Blazers, I don't
Mm,
know. The 60 million cap room, I mean, it sounds good in concept. But
right.
who's coming to Portland, bro? Who's coming to Portland? What are they trading to bring it to Portland? I don't know. Like I they're thinking like, wow, we have all this cap room. Look, if LA had this cap room, you know what? They're gonna have a big four. If they have
Right.
if the Knicks have this, they're gonna have some crazy big three. Not in Portland, bro. Not in Portland. I just think that especially it just sucks for small market teams this way, but this is not how you rebuild or retool as a small market team. You got to look
Mm,
at the Grizzlies in the way that they did it through the draft. You got to look at these other teams as the blueprint. And the Trailblazers, I mean, they're trying so hard. And yeah, we're gonna get to the Wizards later because they're doing this as well. But the Wizards are at least a bigger market as well. At least they're at least a bigger market than Portland. But at the same time, I mean, this is I know I'm not agreeing with the way they're going through this, and I think that they could have gone through different avenues. Maybe like a complete rebuild would have been better. They have at least some young guys there, but I'm not a fan of this. Lillard's going to sign that big time contract, and I think they're going to regret it almost instantly. They're going to try to look for him to trade him soon. But yeah, I just not a big fan of the way that they're trying to go about this, especially because I just don't know who they're going to bring in.
right.
We just have no idea. Let's move on to the last like big trade that we're going to talk about. And we're going to, of course, going to like kind of try and get through the other ones. Kristaps Porzingis. Yeah, Kristaps Porzingis got traded today, which I don't know. I think we talked about this beforehand. None of us really saw this coming, but the trade did pull through. Kristaps Porzingis in a second round pick. We don't know what year it is. I'm not sure if you have it up there, but I'm not sure like what year it's going to be in. I don't.
I don't think it depends on when it conveys, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Okay. Cool. So the Kristaps Porzingis and the second round pick goes to the Washington Wizards in exchange for Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans. So bad contract for bad contract. Weird type of trade here. Porzingis is on the move into the East, back into the East. Jalon, what were your thoughts on this trade? This really caught me by surprise.
Bro, so my first question is like, so like did the Goran Dragic thing, was that was that just smoke and mirrors before the season started, right? Like they had
Yeah.
their heart set on Goran. The big issue for them coming into the season was like the Toronto Raptors weren't willing to buy him out, and the only way that they were going to get off of him was trading him. Well, they traded him to the Spurs, and it sounds like the Spurs are willing to buy him out.
Yeah.
Seemed like it would have just been all about patience, right? At that point, you just wait for him to become available. Then you go after him on the buyout market. Seemed like a perfect fit considering him and Luca have been teammates on the international circuit before. Seemed like it would work perfectly,
Yeah.
right? And instead, you go after Spencer Dinwiddie using Kristaps Porzingis almost as like some kind of makeup trade for the fact that like they went after Spencer Dinwiddie this offseason via free agency and didn't win out, right? Of course, he ends up in the sign and trade between Brooklyn and Washington. I thought the point was to get a point guard to help make all of this work, not, move Kristaps in the midst of trying to get the point guard. And it's like, is Goran still on the market for this team? Because like now
No.
he's a backup point guard and he's playing next to Jalen Brunson. I don't get that either. So like my whole thing is like, what did Dallas gain from this? And then for Washington, they just went full blown fire sale mode today. Like, we're going to end up talking about like two or three other trades involving Washington. It was like they got the news about Bradley Beal saying that he was getting his hand surgery. And they're just like, oh, all right, throw everybody in the mix while still not actually throwing Bradley out on the market.
Yeah.
Seemed like the perfect time to be like, all right, he clearly doesn't want to be here. We're not going to be able to play further, or at least based off the actions of deciding to get season ending in surgery. Excuse
Yeah.
me. You put all that together. What did either one of these teams gain? What did either one of these teams come out of this trade and say we're better because of blank? I don't see what either one of these teams are able to walk away with their heads held high, saying what? I don't get it.
I I'm still trying to, even up till now, like even as you were talking, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the idea of this trade. The Mavericks get Spencer Dinwiddie. Obviously, he is the main focus of the trade for them. Davis Bertans is contract filler, one of the worst contracts in the NBA. They acquired him onto the team. But I don't know about you, but whenever I hear these like rumors about Dragic, Spencer Dinwiddie, when he came here, I'm like, what's going on with Jalen Brunson? My man's been balling out all season
There we
long.
go.
Like he's been balling out all season long. I'm like, are they just not? Are they just disrespecting my guy? Because for me, he's like Freddie Van Vliet Jr. You know what I'm telling?
For
Like
sure.
he's like building that same mold. I am like super high on Jalen Brunson, and then like I keep hearing the Mavericks trying to get another guard. I'm like, do you really need to? I mean, Jalen could just like come in and do some big things for your team. So like the fact they got Dinwiddie here, apparently they still want to keep Jalen Brunson around. That's a goal for them. They just re-signed Finney Smith, which is something that like I think it was like a 4-year, $52 million deal. That happened today. And I don't know. I mean, like, I'm just looking at their big man situation right now. Kleber, Dwight Powell, both on.
No
Like,
types of rim defense over there, my
I,
guy. And I don't think Kristaps was giving it to you either. But I mean, like, I don't get it. Like, it almost felt like a recovery trade. Like, oh, we didn't get our guy in the offseason, so we'll use Kristaps as the trade chip to get him now. What does Kristaps Porzingis on Washington do? That's what I don't understand either. Is that their way of trying to get a young piece as a precursor to trying to move off of Bradley Beal? Because even if
I think
that's
it's
the
the
case,
opposite. I think that's the. I think it's the opposite. Actually,
you
I'll get
think
to
so?
afterwards. Yeah, I think the opposite. They want to keep Bradley Beal. It's the same thing with the boy. It's the same thing with the Blazers, bro. They're trying to keep Bradley Beal, and he's gonna be the second star beside him. Whether that works out or not, wait to be seen. We can't even see it this year. We have to wait till next season, and we know not have to wait till next season because Porzingis, knock on wood, his injury issue. We don't know what's gonna happen with him either, but I don't know. It's just kind of their way saying like, look, Bradley, we're trying to put you another with a second star. I'm not a huge fan of it either. At least I think if I had to pick a winner, it has to be kind of the Wizards because as default, because I don't know what the heck the Mavs are doing with like three guards who can like all potentially start. And I mean, Tim Hardaway Jr. is injured as well, but at the same time, he could still be put in that mix. But
Right.
I don't know, like the Kristaps Porzingis going there, I think it's a way of telling Bradley Beal they want to stay. But again, same thing with the Lillard situation. This is basically like the Blazers out east. Should you even be doing this? I don't think so. They're doing their best to try and do it, but I'm still not a huge fan of this. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
I mean, I guess the Wizards win. I guess.
I don't know, man. Like I mentioned it earlier, that I felt like this was a similar, like you mentioned before, a very similar thing to what the Blazers are doing. It just feels like at least the Blazers have a calculated methodology around all of this where they have this freed up money, they have picks now, like they have some kind of direction as to maybe what they're gonna do with these things. Maybe it might not amount to whatever they draw up on the whiteboard, right? But at least they have some kind of direction. I don't understand what Washington is doing, what their expectation is, and if getting Kristaps Porzingis is your way of saying, please, Bradley, stay, I think CJ McCollum's a better player than Kristaps Porzingis. CJ clearly wasn't strong enough to keep Damian Lillard's team above water as a side partner for him. What is Kristaps Porzingis gonna do? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I mean, there's some other trades they did here. They trade away some young pieces. They still have KCP on the roster somehow, as well, which really confuses me. But at the end of the day, they think that Bradley Beal and Kristaps Porzingis can take them to the future, which I don't really understand. I don't know. I really don't. But that trade happened. I don't think any of us thought it was gonna happen, but it happened, and now Kristaps is back over east. Dinwiddie is on the west. Dallas Mavericks fans are extremely pissed, by the way. If you look at their subreddit,
Right,
if you
right.
look at their subreddit,
Yeah,
it's
subreddit is terrified. Twitter ain't any better right now
it
either.
is it isn't. It really isn't. Like yeah, this trade was just odd. This was just a weird trade. I just like I really don't understand it, but the trade happened. Pretty big names actually being attached to it, and Dinwiddie and Porzingis. But even Jalon and we're at the end of this segment. We don't know what's still going on. We don't know, but we'll have to see, I guess, come the off season. Now let's get to the rest of these trades. Okay, I mean, we spent a lot of time on these first four trades, and rightfully so. These are the ones that gained garnered a lot of headlines, but a lot of trades happen here. We're not going to go as long into each of them, but we are going to go through them little by little. Let's get into this. It's going to be a lot coming at you. So let's go. Starting off with the first trade that happened earlier on late last week. The Clippers receiving Norman Powell and Robert Covington. Yes, that Trailblazers trade that we said was going to happen for Eric Bledsoe, Justice Winslow, Keon Johnson, and a 2025 second round pick. I think we're both in the same boat here. What are your thoughts on this trade?
I mean, it makes the Clippers better. It puts them in a position moving forward. I think Norman Powell's the one who's actually signed long term, and Robert Covington's the one that's
Yeah, just 5 year
expiring.
deal. Yeah, 5 year deal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
correct.
I mean, they did get a little bit of security there with that. I think they both will provide something for them moving forward. I also think these are two guys that should be able to gel pretty well next to Paul George and Kawhi Leonard once they get back on the floor healthy. Interesting to see whether or not that happens this season. The Clippers are going to be competitive all year. With Ty Lue coaching, they're going to be competitive. I think this just adds to their competitive fervor by getting guys who are going to be locked in with a veteran mentality. I think they'll retain Robert Covington in the offseason for maybe a cheaper deal if possible. And these guys will fit in the mixture with their two superstars. This might be one of those things that keeps them competitive this year and makes them more dangerous next season. And that's probably how we have to view this Clippers trade.
No, you took the words right out of my mouth. I agree with every single point you made there. Norman Powell and Kawhi Leonard have that history from the Toronto Raptors championship team. And Kawhi knows that in the big moments, Norman Powell steps up big in the playoffs. Covington has had some playoff experience as well. He's an inferior good defender. He actually will fit very well in this Clippers system. And honestly, it's just a good trade for the Clippers for not giving up a lot whatsoever, giving up Bledsoe and Justice Winslow, who haven't been horrible this year, but also they were extremely expendable. They had to give away their first round pick this past season and Keon Johnson and also a second round pick, but that's not much. If you're bringing in guys who can actually help with your team now and also going forward, I think it was a great fair trade for them. As for the Blazers, we don't have to go into this really much further. We know their intentions here, but they got fleeced. Let's be honest, they got fleeced.
Yeah.
You couldn't even get a first round pick for trading two rotational players. I mean, come on now. I mean, this is the trade. I mean, I didn't think it was as bad as the like. I don't think the Josh Hart trade was that bad. This one, pretty bad. It was pretty bad. Yeah, let's go. Let's go on to the next one. Let's move on to this next trade, which also happened a few days ago. The Cavaliers bringing in Karis LeVert in a second round pick in exchange for Ricky Rubio, a first round pick in 2022, a second round pick in 2022, and a second round pick in 2027. It was a good trade. They finally got in another guard help because of course they lost a lot of guards due to injury this year. Sad to see Ricky Rubio go, but hopefully he can come back next year. Jalen, what were your thoughts on this trade?
I mean, I this is one of those that I've been beating the table for the last couple of weeks now. I thought Karras to Cleveland was perfect. If their idea is that they want to lean into being a playoff team this year and moving forward, while still being able to get a young piece in the midst of all of this, Karis LeVert is still within the time frame of this young building blocks. Some of the young building blocks they have on the team with Darius Garland. Obviously, Evan Mobley is the guy in terms of moving forward, but Jared Allen has been really good as well. I just thought that you couldn't get away with Jetty Osman and Isaac Okoro offensively at the 2/3 guard position. Now, I do still feel like with Karis LeVert, they don't add that much defense at the three or at the two for that matter. So I still think they're a little soft at the wing. But in terms of needing another secondary ball handler outside of Darius Garland, you get Karis that it helps at least address that issue. Another thing was I saw a stat that apparently like Cleveland is one of the bottom five scoring teams in terms of guys driving to the basket. Karis LeVert is apparently like top five in points scored driving to the basket. So I guess it also directly applies a band-aid
Yeah.
to a need that they have offensively, which is putting more pressure on the rim. I think Karis LeVert fits really well. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of impact he has, like immediately. But the real question is, you guys made a playoff caliber move. You're gonna need your boys to kind of show out in the playoffs because we all know that Cleveland is peaking very high, very early in comparison to what we thought they were, where we thought they were going to be coming into the season. Now you guys have bought in, so you're gonna have to show up. I'm not saying you got to win a first round matchup, but you're gonna have to be competitive to justify making a playoff style of a trade this early in you guys' rebuild because it is still a little bit too soon.
Yeah, and no, that is definitely like something to look out for. And Karis LeVert, this trade like rumor hasn't been going on just for the last few weeks. I think this has been going on since like last year, like December of last year. The idea of Karis LeVert going to the Cavaliers, especially after Colin Sexton went out there, like people were thinking they needed some help on the wings. He could also do a little bit of ball handling. You wouldn't be too mad with him handling the ball. He can shoot the three ball, create his own shot. They just need someone else. Like, I mean, he's kind of a black hole in offense. Let's be honest. He's kind of a black hole. Sometimes he's not the greatest passer, but he is someone who can dribble out, create his own shot. But they kind of need more of those guys. Let's be honest. I mean, Darius Garland is like kind of their only guy, like kind of developing offense. Levert finally can have another guy beside him that can create his own shot. He has that connection with Jared Allen as well. They had the chemistry from the time they were in Brooklyn together. And to be honest, as long as they can keep, I mean, like you said, stay competitive in the first round, make it like a 6 or 7 game series. And I think it's a successful season for them. And I think like Karis LeVert is going to help those chances. Maybe even take him to maybe take him past the first round. Who knows? But I do like this trade for them. And using Ricky Rubio like to like his expiring contract in this trade, very very useful. Nice that they can have him. The Pacers got some picks in return, which I like about this as well. I think it's a good trade for the Cavaliers. Excited to see how this team is going to work together in the next few months. Moving on to the next trade, well, we're going to be moving on finally to a trade that happened yesterday. The trade that happened yesterday, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, yeah, the guy who just got traded to the Trailblazers, he's out of there, and Juancho Hernan-Gomez in exchange for Joe Ingles, Elijah Hughes, and a second round pick. Quick thoughts on this, Jalen?
I mean, I think that Nikhil gets put in a really solid position now to actually kind of flaunt, kind of actually learn, kind of actually maximize his potential as an off the bench scorer. Other than that, something slight, I mean, that's the best way to kind of phrase it. Something slight in the trade market.
Yeah, no, 100%. The Jazz got to use Joe Ingles' expiring contract to take on Hernan Gomez's contract and then bring in Nickeil Alexander-Walker, where a need it was addressed. Of course, Ingles went down with injury. They needed some depth on the wing. They got a nice young player who not only is going to be here this year, but also next year, so he can grow with their bench as well. I think it's a solid trade for the Utah Jazz, and the Blazers continue to accumulate young players and draft picks. Nothing much to go into there, but it was a good trade for the Jazz. And man, I can't believe I forgot about this trade. This trade should have been part of the top tier trades. I can't believe I forgot to discuss this. The Heat receive a 2026 second round pick from the Oklahoma City Thunder for KZ Okpala. The Oklahoma City Thunder, they gave up a pick. They gave up a pick. It is a miracle. 48 draft picks down to 47.
Oh
They
man.
made a trade. Jalen, what are your thoughts on this momentous occasion?
I think that's such a great way to phrase it because of the mere fact that it's just like when you have a hoarder finally give up a little bit of something that they're hoarding, it almost feels like progress.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that it's so minimal, right?
Yeah.
It actually feels like progress for OKC. And look, man, I actually believe in Oklahoma City and their rebuild moving forward. Actually, a lot more than I think a lot of people do. Josh Giddey has been super solid this year. Very, very good. Still not the shooter that everybody was hoping he would be able to develop into
He's
over
getting better.
time.
He's getting
But he's
better.
improving. Yeah, he's improving. I think he's been a two-time Western Conference Rookie of the Year, Rookie of the month.
Yeah.
So that's been huge too. Obviously, having Shea Gilgeous-Alexander in and out of the lineup due to these injuries, and of course there's a little bit of rest element in there as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's made it really hard for us to get a full picture of what this team could look like moving forward. question about Lou Dort's future for this team. I think that might have semi got answered at the trade deadline because I thought he was a guy who might get a look. But I mean, look, man, I think the Thunder, they're one more season away from pulling the trigger. I know they have all
They
these
are.
picks in the background, but I think they are like one more tanking season away from putting the whole league on notice in terms of being one of those young up and coming rosters. And look, we watched Cleveland do it overnight. So let's not get too surprised with the Oklahoma City Thunder making this one little small move because one little small move can turn into a lot of other things. I think that OKC, I think they're starting to realize that they're closer than most people think.
Yeah. I mean, KZ Okpala sucks for him because he really didn't get a chance with the Heat. He was injured quite a bit. Maybe he could get some play with the Jazz. We'll have to wait and see. But honestly, this feels like one of those kind of like AA meetings where you have to kind of like you have to like you have Sam Presti in the room and you're like, you have a problem. You just keep trading for draft picks. You have to realize you have a problem and move forward. This is the first step to realizing that you have a problem. They finally got off a second round pick. Fair play. It's still for a what like a middle schooler. It's still for a middle schooler, but nonetheless, it's a trade nonetheless. Oklahoma City rejoice. You actually got a player in return for a pick. And I'm with you, to be honest. I'm with you. I think I'm actually in the same boat. I think they're actually a lot closer than we think. I think that there's going to be like this one off season where the Thunder can go bang, 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 trade after trade after trade, and they're actually going to have a really solid roster going forward. Just be patient, OKC fans. Just be patient. And I know you probably have heard that for the last 3 years, but continue to be patient. Just continue to be patient. You're almost there. You're almost there. Oh boy, this is gonna take a lot of there's gonna be a lot of talking for this next trade. A
Yeah.
four-team trade. The first trade of today, actually. We finally got into the first trade. Let's get into this. I mean, four-team trade. The Kings received Dante DiVincenzo from the Bucks, Trey Lyles from the Pistons, and Josh Jackson from the Pistons as well. The Pistons received Marvin Bagley, who is obviously the biggest name in this trade. The Bucks received Serge Ibaka, two future second-round picks, and cash considerations. And the Clippers received Rodney Hood and Semi Ojeleye. A lot of players, a lot of teams. Jalon, can you make out anything of this? Like, what are your thoughts on this trade?
Okay, so if we go team by team, I think Milwaukee getting Serge Ibaka is big, especially with the fact that Brook Lopez has been injured basically since opening night. So
Yeah,
that's one of those things that, especially with his trajectory moving forward, he's still a rim protecting big who can stretch the floor. So he has a lot of the similar attributes that Brook Lopez brought to this team. Maybe not at the level that Brook Lopez has, but he is definitely some kind of
light
subjectively
version.
light. Yeah, I was gonna say subjectively speaking, light version
Yeah,
of what Brook Lopez gives them. With Sacramento, getting Dante DiVincenzo was something they kind of already should have done. This was a guy who, if you
the
remember,
Bogdanovich trade, the
when
Bogdanovich.
Bogdanovich,
Yeah,
exactly, when
yeah,
the Bogdanovich trade didn't go through,
yeah.
the initial deal had Dante DiVincenzo a part of the exchange, and it seemed like a perfect fit for both teams. You give Bogdanovich another team where he can be a stretch guy who can handle the ball a little bit. You give Sacramento a little bit more athleticism and a lot more perimeter attack defense with a guy like Dante who coming out of that Villanova system, we know he's defensively sound and we know that he can also be a intelligent player for a Sacramento team that definitely needs a little bit of a basketball IQ resurgence, you know?
Yeah.
But you also get guys like Josh Jackson in this trade as well, adding to the athleticism. Is he going to play a lot of minutes for you? I don't think so. But does he give you at least a little bit of a burst off the bench if he does play? I think that's something that we can at least take a look at. For the Clippers, Rodney Hood, Semi Ojeleye, again, the Clippers just getting depth. Are all of these guys gonna play? I don't think so. Especially when we talk about next season, this team is gonna get whittled down. It'll be really interesting to see who kind of makes the final cut when we look at next year's team, because that's the team that I think is going for the
Yeah,
chip.
yeah,
Next year's version of the Clippers, they might be a top five team on paper today with everybody healthy
hundred
going into
percent,
next season. And
100%.
that doesn't even involve anything in terms of the offseason with the cap being moved up and everything like that. And then the Detroit Pistons getting Marvin Bagley. The free Marvin Bagley chance come to a halt. He is
Yeah,
finally no longer under the Sacramento Kings
yeah,
umbrella. And he gets to play next to Cade Cunningham. Sounds like a W to me. So honestly, I think this is the perfect opportunity for him. You look at the circumstances for him moving forward. He's always been a 14-7 guy. Now he gets to play next to a guy who, basketball sound in terms of Cade Cunningham as a facilitator, and just a more high energy based program right now. Talking about the Detroit Pistons, like they just look way more competitive on a nightly basis than the Kings ever are. I think Marvin Bagley is gonna finally get the chance to maybe not be the third overall pick guy that everybody viewed him as, but I think somewhere in that ilk of finally showing out to be one of the better guys out of his draft class.
Yeah, no, that's the biggest thing here. Marvin Bagley finally gets his chance. His dad must be over the moon right now that his son is finally out of the Kings system. The Pistons, of course, they got Cade Cunningham feeding him the ball. Great. It's going to be honestly a good chance for him to finally like show off that he could be that guy. He didn't resign his contract with the Kings. I think this is like his fourth year in the league. He can maybe finally like get like a deal there with the Pistons as well to kind of grow with the system as well. And in terms of the rest of this trade, you can't hate it from anywhere. I mean, you really can't hate it from like any team. DiVincenzo, the Kings get him after a year and a half. Lyles and Jackson. I mean, Josh Jackson was my guy coming out of that draft, and sadly, he hasn't really turned into anything. The Bucks get help for Brook Lopez, and I think the only thing that says about the Bucks is that maybe this Brook Lopez thing is like a lot more serious than we thought it was going to be. They have to get the help. They also get 2 second-round picks, which they could probably use in a trade later on down the line. And then the Clippers, they got out of Serge Ibaka, which actually like is big for them because they were over the luxury tax, and they're gonna have to pay a hefty amount by keeping Serge Ibaka on the roster. They got rid of him. They got 2 guys. Will they play? Will they not play? It really doesn't matter. They're not going to be like having meaningful minutes on the team. But Serge Ibaka wasn't that difference maker. They're going to be like, yep, we definitely have to like we need to keep him for this championship team. It's worth paying the luxury tax. It wasn't really all that. It's fine for all teams. A lot happened here, but honestly, glad that Marvin Bagley can have a chance at the Pistons. Excited to see what he could do, especially in this like post All-Star break. We could finally see maybe like a good sample size of what him, Cade. You could throw in Isaiah Stewart, Sadiq Bey in there as well. Very excited to see them like that core group of guys play together. Moving on, finally, we get to go into a trade on my end. We're going to talk the Toronto Raptors, a trade that we've waited all season for, to be honest. Goran Dragic and a lottery protected first round pick in exchange for Thaddeus Young, Drew Eubanks, who was just released 3 hours ago, and the Detroit Pistons second round pick. Technically a first round pick, Raptor fans. It's a first round pick because they're a pretty bad team. But Jalon, your thoughts on this trade? Dragic finally moves from Toronto.
I just again, and I mentioned it briefly talking about Dallas. I just think it's going to be really interesting moving forward to see where Goran really lands, right? Because we understand, at least it was reported that Goran Dragic is more than likely going to be bought out, and I think that he, as a backup point guard, even maybe as a lead guard for some of these teams, could be a really interesting fit for some of these teams looking to make a playoff push. Now, TV, in terms of getting my guy Thaddeus Young, though.
Oh, I've seen both fans get pissed. I was like,
Look, man, hurt me
Thaddeus.
straight to my
Yeah,
core because
yeah.
that's that look, if we had to lose anybody in that exchange for DeMar DeRozan, I'm okay with it being Thad. But at the end of the day, man, that's a good, solid rotational guy. And TV, I gotta tell you the truth. The minute I saw the trade, you can ask my girl. She was sitting right next to me. The minute I saw the trade, I said, I think the Raptors just got better with Thad. Like legitimately, the
We
first
did.
thing I said when I saw the trade was like, the Raptors made themselves a solid little pickup by getting Thaddeus Young. I mean, look, they're already embracing the length all over the court, right? They're already embracing having intelligent basketball players who play with pace and space while also having significant length on the defensive end. Thad Young is a great post presence passer, and he's going to be a really good inside presence on the defensive end for you guys. I mean, look, you guys, I still think that a true traditional center, like going after Miles Turner, if he was available, for example, this season's a little bit of interesting in terms of whether he could really impact this year. But looking forward, getting a real rim defender like Miles Turner would have been the apex trade for the Toronto Raptors. But getting Thaddeus Young, man, and you can't be mad at it. You can't.
No, and that's the thing. Look, I'm like I'm in kind of like engraved in the Raptors community, like talking with people a lot online, just like talking with a lot of Raptor fans. And initially, I mean, I think what really hurt like a lot of Raptor fans here is that the reports that were coming out. I mean, people were saying like Porzingis might come to Toronto, Miles Turner might be coming to Toronto, and I'm like,
Right.
I was like, are you sure? Like, are you sure? Like, I don't think it's like that much of a market for Goran Dragic. And I think this trade like kind of proved like my thoughts exactly. And people saying like, oh, Thaddeus Young is like past his past his his best self and stuff like that. He's 33 years old, and I'm like, this is not a bad trade. This is not a bad trade for the Raptors whatsoever. People are freaking out about that first round pick too. I'm like, y'all, we're gonna get like the 23rd, 24th pick this year, maybe 22nd. The Pistons, we have the Pistons second round pick. That's not that far off. It's only like 10 picks off. It's not even that bad. So I like it. I like Thaddeus Young. Like I looked at the trade. I didn't think it was I was surprised when we got Thaddeus Young, but I was like, you know what? It's cool.
Right. It's
Look at him.
respectable. It's
It's respectable.
respectable play.
No, he fits our system perfectly. This guy is a good facilitator, a smart defender, and he's a veteran, which the Raptors don't have any. We were supposed to have the Dragic was supposed to be that guy. This guy's been chilling in Miami for the last 4 months, like not even with the team. We have someone who we can trust. He could be like our sixth, seventh man off the bench, and sometimes he can close games for us. I mean, both fans were cheesed when
Yeah, man. I ain't
when they
gonna
couldn't bring him,
lie.
when they couldn't even get that young. And I was like, this guy is a solid player. I don't know like where people are getting this idea that he's past his prime and stuff like that. He may not have the athletic ability that he once had, but he's a smart basketball player. He's gonna help out this team, like not just like on the court, but in the locker room. Someone who has like a calming voice, someone who just knows how things work in this league, helping a lot of the young guys that the Raptors have. Because a couple of these Raptors kind of have a couple of hotheads, They got Pascal Siakam, they got Scotty Barnes, who's complained to the refs time and time again. Gary Trent, who's been ejected like once or twice this year. That young, you need that veteran presence in the locker room, and the Raptors haven't had that all year. They finally have it. And yes, I mean Drew Banks is included here too, but we just released them. But at the end of the day, I'm okay with it. I'm honestly I'm a lot more high on it than a lot of Raptor fans are. I think it's good. I still think it's a good trade. We didn't have to give up much draft capital because we're only moving back like what 10 positions, 11 positions most. We're still gonna get a rookie in the next draft. We're fine, Raptors fans. We got someone who wasn't playing at all in Dragic, and we can finally have a rotational piece. It's good. We're all good. And I mean, Raptors fans are like at least like two rotational players, and I'm like, I think people were overestimating Dragic's just value in general. And I think that the Raptors, the fact that we got someone that could be a seventh man in rotation, it's a big dub. It's a big dub in my opinion. As the Bulls fan here, these guys were heartbroken. People, I've seen so many Johnson things on my timeline. I'm like, oh look, good trade for us. I was already a big fan of Thaddeus Young. I'm glad that he's gonna be a part of this system. Let's move on to the next trade. This one's not going to take too long because Bol has been traded technically for the third time this season. It's Bol, PJ Dozier in a second round pick, along with cash considerations to the Celtics for a second round, and to the Magic for a second round pick. Any thoughts?
I mean, I just think that Bobo is going to be fun. He's going to be fun on the Magic. They're going to be interesting. They have a lot of length. If you think about Jonathan Isaac, Franz Wagner's been really good this season. Jalen Suggs, hopefully in year 2, will be a lot better because Bobo and PJ Dozier are out for the season. So this is more like projecting for next year. You still get a young guy in Bobo without actually having to commit like any real draft capital towards such a swing like that. And you've seen Bobo at least, at some levels playing with the Denver Nuggets and definitely in the G League. So you have some understanding of just like how crazy he could be if given, the chance to be lit off the leash a little bit. So I think it's just an interesting trade overall in terms of the Magic. They add a lot more length. They get a little bit more interesting, but nothing too crazy, bro.
Yeah, no risk, high reward. That's basically the idea of this trade. And I mean, I had a whole segment on Bol when he got traded the first time. I think people are hella overrating this guy. If out of all the Nuggets had injuries upon injuries upon injuries this year, and the fact that he couldn't still touch the court, I think says a lot about like how the Nuggets view him and how he's come along as a player. I don't think that much. I just think it's but for the Magic's a team that's still rebuilding, low risk, high reward. I do not mind it whatsoever. And the Celtics, at least just get 2 roster spots. Maybe they can be active on the buyout market. Next trade, another Celtics trade actually. Derek White going to the Boston Celtics in exchange for Josh Richardson, Romeo Langford, and a 2022 first round pick. A pretty solid trade for this. A pretty like decent name for the Celtics. Getting Derek White. Jalon, what were your thoughts on this trade?
I mean, if anybody's gonna play the winner or loser game where it's outright, I definitely feel like the Celtics are a winner in terms of this particular transaction. You get another big ball handling, you know, wing creator, a guy who can take up some minutes, even at point guard. I think in terms
Yeah,
of being a facilitator for all of the madness. I think he has the chance to be a plus defender on this team with all the length that the Celtics have. I mean, and let's be real, like Josh Richardson wasn't giving them really anything. So I don't know how much Josh Richardson gives San Antonio. I mean, maybe he gets to be that perimeter wing defender that just shoots the ball really well for them. But Josh Richardson hasn't really been the guy like that we all hoped he would be since his last season in Miami. So at this point, it's kind of the idea of just taking a swing on him if you're San Antonio and hoping that maybe he gets his mojo back. But for the Celtics, yeah, you get another ball creator, get another ball handler, another little shot creator, and somebody else to kind of take up minutes at the guard position. I mean, I think the Celtics came up.
yeah. No, I like the trade for the Celtics. Derek White for me is like a pretty underrated player. He doesn't get talked about a lot. The only really attention he got is when he was with Team USA. I think that one summer when he. I'm not sure if that. I don't think that team did well, right? I don't think that was. I think that was a team that. I think that was a team that actually that didn't even get to the championship game. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was pretty tough for that team. But at the same time, Derek White is a solid player. Can shoot the 3 ball. Can handle the ball. And you are giving away a first round pick, and Romeo Langford, I think, like he's still like a young piece, but you got someone more reliable. And the Celtics have definitely been turning it up recently. I think Derek White is definitely going to help out that team. Spurs fans are devastated because they're a huge fan. Like there are a lot of like Derek White lovers there, but for the Celtics, I think they got themselves a good guard, especially because they traded one of them, which we'll talk about a bit later on. Next trade, we have the Phoenix Suns finally getting off of Jalen Smith, trading him in a second round pick for Torrey Craig. Quick thoughts on this?
Get Torrey Craig back,
He's
lost him in
back.
the offseason, brings him back. He's going to play well for them in terms of their center spot. They are pretty locked up. I think it's hard to ever be mad about getting more wings on the squad, especially if you're Phoenix, right? It seems like they have all the 3 and D wings. Add another guy in Torrey Craig back to the squad. No harm, no foul done by giving up Jalen Smith either. And I do feel like that is a little bit of a high upside thing for Indiana. Again, another one of those things from the big spot because now you're kind of fleshed out, right? Because you have Isaiah Jackson, who you picked up in the draft this past NBA draft. You got Jalen Smith now. Miles Turner is another guy on this squad at the big man position. Now the question is whether or not Goga Batazde gets lost in the mix in all of this because that's another
Yeah,
guy they committed draft capital to as well. But I mean, they got more than enough bigs. They'll figure it out. They're in retool mode, right? So they can do whatever they want in terms of having depth at positions. And I think Jalen Smith, I'm a Maryland guy, so I gotta shout
yeah,
out my Maryland guys.
yeah,
So it's one of those things where I think that in the perfect situation where he can kind of just play basketball and learn on the job, he's gonna be able to grow into the guy that I think certain people thought he could be coming out of UMD. I just don't think playing for a championship caliber team like Phoenix that he would get the chance to kind of take those bumps and bruises.
yeah. No, 100%. And I think in the year he got drafted, I mean, he just like that's when like Phoenix Suns really start to finally like kind of like figure things out a bit more. So he kind of did get lost in the mix. Gets traded to the Pacers. They're retooling mode. They got some guys injured. He's gonna have an opportunity there. I mean, he's gonna play. He's basically playing for a contract now. He's gonna be an unrestricted free agent past this season. So maybe he can finally like make something out of here as part of the final like few months with the Pacers. He could. I like the opportunity there for Jalen Smith. In terms of the Phoenix Suns getting Torrey Craig back, plug and play. This guy knows the system. He's the reason he made it to the NBA championship anyway. So, so like, I mean, you got the guy. You're now guaranteed to go back to the finals because you got Torrey Craig. Easy. Next trade. This one is actually a pretty important one because the Wizards received Ish Smith again, Vernon Carey Jr. and a second round pick for Montrezl Harrell. The Hornets finally addressed their center position. Jalon, your thoughts on this trade?
That statement is what I take away from this trade. The Charlotte Hornets, granted, again, another one of those teams where Christian Wood or getting a guy like Miles Turner would have been an interesting and maybe more high upside pick in terms of them making the playoffs this season and being a legitimate threat in the playoffs this year. But Montrezl Harrell is a high energy player. He's going to give you a good 20, 25 minutes off the bench. And on this team, I think realistically, he's going to be even more fun because they like to run. And I think with a high energy guy like Montrezl Harrell, that's going to be big time for them by adding another high energy guy on both ends of the floor. I think that's going to be important to note is that Montrezl Harrell, despite being undersized at the center position, definitely plays above his belt. And I think that's going to be something that the same way LaMelo Ball is infectious on the offensive end in terms of encouraging guys to run the floor, make themselves available and things like that. I think Montrezl Harrell is going to be somebody who's going to be big time in terms of motivating guys on the defensive end to commit harder. And that's when things really get dangerous. Because if Charlotte even remotely gets, to top 15, top 12 defensive rating wise in the NBA, along with their high powered offense, oh, they're going to be dangerous. And then Washington, look, man, I already told you earlier, they're in full fire sale mode. I don't know what's going on. Getting Vernon Carey, getting Ish Smith back. I
Yeah,
don't know, man.
yeah. I mean, there's nothing much to go for the Wizards side. There's nothing much to talk about. We've talked about him enough in this episode.
Yeah.
Montrezl Harrell, I don't think he's a long term solution. I think he's a good bandage situation until they realize what they want to do come this offseason. But you hit all the points there. I mean, it feels like forever ago, but he was the sixth man of the year 2 years ago. It has felt like forever, but this guy's gonna give you a solid like 15 and 8 off the bench. This guy's gonna be high energy. He has been exposed in the playoffs in the past, so I will like that is something to be a lookout for. But they didn't have to give up much. They gave up basically nothing. They still got PJ Washington on the roster. They still got Mason Plumlee. This is just more depth that can actually play for them right here, right now. Good short
Yeah,
term
it's a
solution.
homecoming too. It's a homecoming
Homecoming.
for Montrezl Harrell too, because he's from North Carolina as well. So maybe he'll play inspired. Who
Yeah,
knows?
yeah. No, of course, in front of the family and all that. Of course, I think that will have something to do with it. Good bandage solution. I think this is like a good trade just because they didn't have to give up much. It's a good short term solution. I think he's going to produce honestly right away once he gets to the Hornets. Let's go on to this next trade, and again, a massive trade that I did not get to mention earlier. Cash considerations from the Wizards, from the Suns for Aaron Holiday. Anything, anything? No, anything?
Nah, man. Jeez. I mean, like I said, I mean the main thing that I take away from the Wizards today is that they are in the middle ground, bro. I mean, when you look at all of the exchanges they did make, all of the exchanges they didn't, it just seems like they want to keep Bradley, but they don't know how to keep Bradley.
Yeah,
And those are two totally different trajectories moving forward in terms of what they're going to do because you can't build around a guy that you're not sure is going to stick around, but you can't trade the guy if he seems like he wants to stay. So it puts them in a weird bind. I do understand it. And look, the Wizards, it's hard to get same thing with Portland. I want to make this very clear. Like, it's hard to be mad at an organization for embracing guys who want to stay because we just got on Sacramento for shipping out a guy who was committed to them and he was 2 years deep. You're talking about guys like Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal have been around their respective franchises
for a
much
decade.
longer.
Yeah, like a
So
decade. Yeah,
if they at least verbally are committed to you, it's kind of hard to play bad guy and go against their wishes when there's a lot of incompetent franchises going against those guys' wishes and looking like fools for it later. So they're in a weird crossroads, man. I don't know if the Wizards did anything today that makes them look good, but nonetheless, bro, at the end of the day, at least we do know one definitive thing, TV.
yeah,
The Wizards are definitely making a tank play to try to end up somewhere in the top 5. We see that they have
yeah.
finally made that commitment to put themselves back in the lottery mix.
We don't know what Kristaps Porzingis has to say about that. This guy,
Oh God, you're right though. You're right though. And you know Kuz ain't gonna go out like
no
no
way,
hoe
bro.
either, man. That's
No,
true.
they're gonna try. They're gonna try their best not to. They're gonna try their best not to.
Oh
Aaron
man.
Holiday. I mean, Aaron Holiday. More guard depth for the Suns. The rich just get richer.
Right.
Basically, that's it. Next trade. I think this is the final trade. Yes, we finally got to the final trade of the trade deadline, and it was another odd one for me. The Celtics bring back Daniel Tice after losing him for half a season, and they trade away basically Ennis Freedom, Bruno Fernando, and Schroeder. So Schroeder is now going from 2 years, 84 million, sorry, 4 years, 84 million to the Houston Rockets on a mid-level exception deal. What a fall from grace. Any thoughts on this trade?
I mean, Daniel Theis, I think he was good for the Celtics. I wasn't really sure what that disconnect was from the beginning, honestly.
Yeah.
And then
I don't know
Dennis
why they didn't bring him.
Schroeder.
I don't know why they didn't bring him back last year after last year.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like one season too late in terms of reacquiring him. I thought they definitely could have used the size last year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then, I mean, in terms of Dennis Schroeder, I guess him ending up on Houston just gives him the best chance to like finally revitalize his career a little bit. I mean, he is an expiring contract, so anything he does is going to be something that puts him in the situation to maybe re up. But I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, man. I don't know. Even I guess this is one of those where I think the Celtics kind of just like they look better for it because they get a guy who's gonna be a legit rotational piece for them
Yeah.
right now and moving forward, as opposed to Dennis Schroeder for Houston is definitely just a let go guy.
Yeah.
So I mean, and Enos Freedom isn't even gonna play on this team. I think he
Oh, okay.
already
Oh,
got
oh, yeah, yeah, he got released.
yeah, he
He
already
already,
got released. So I mean, then Bruno Fernando, I mean, he's an interesting big for them too, but Houston has bigger fish to fry, bro.
yeah, no, for sure. The only thing I took away from this is that the Celtics are rebuilding their 2019 team, are they? Aren't they? I mean, they got Jalen Brown still. They got Jason Tatum still. They brought back Al Horford this year. They brought back Daniel Tice this year. They're trying to run it back from 2019. I mean, it made it to the way. I think that's to like the second round. I think that's better than they did last year. So I was like, you know what? If it ain't broke, actually no, they broke it, and then they tried to fix it again. So, so I guess that's the only thing I take away from this. We got through all the trades, quick style, at least with those like last like bunch of trades. Before we move on to the last topic of the show, which is the All Star Draft, I gotta ask you, Jalon. There's some teams that we didn't mention here, in terms of like, especially because some teams didn't even make moves. But what are some of you? Let's start. Let's start positive. What are some of your winners from today? It could be the ones we discussed already, or someone that we haven't really talked about like really that much today.
So I think for me, this is my first one is a homer pick. It is the Bulls, but the reasoning behind it is a little bit different than some of the other guys, some of the other teams that I had as winners. And the reason why the Bulls is winners is because they didn't have to give up anything while still getting some really good news about Patrick Williams. It sounds like from what Karnisovas, our president of basketball operations, said, along with some recent reports and recent video pertaining to Patrick Williams, that it looks like he actually might be able to come back and play this season, which is huge for us because
Massive,
the
massive.
only reason why going after guys like Harrison Barnes and Jeremy Grant, two guys who didn't move, by the way, which is interesting all in itself.
Yeah,
But the only reason why those were guys even mentioned with our team was because Patrick Williams was a guy that we lost earlier in the season, who, granted, a lot younger and still kind of a little wet behind the ears, but was going to be that guy at the 3-4 position for us to kind of help flesh out the starting lineup. So I think with that kind of good news, that's one of those things where, as a competent franchise, you're one of the best teams in the East in terms of the standings right now. You have really good momentum moving forward. You've had a lot of hiccups with injuries to Alex Caruso, Lonzo Ball. We, of course, had the crazy, we were one of the first teams that had a COVID pause, like a legit one that
yeah,
caused, games to get postponed.
yeah, 100
So to
percent.
get through all of that and be an overachieving team and come to the trade deadline and say, you know what, we're able to stand pat and still get some good news on the trade deadline. I gotta say my Bulls definitely came out feeling pretty good despite not making any real transactions today.
Yeah. No, and I have to 100% agree with you. And this just shows that the Bulls front office, from what they've had before with Gar Paxson and all that, it's more mature. They're a lot smarter. because if probably in the Gar Paxson days, if someone like someone as important as Patrick Williams went down with injury, there would be a knee jerk reaction saying, "Oh my gosh, we want to compete. Let's make a trade right away. Let's try and get the Harrison Barnes. We might have to give up a lot more than what we want, but let's try and get him. Try to get Jeremy Grant." But no, Karnisovas, this guy knows how to build teams. He's been there with the Denver Nuggets. He's trying to do it here in the Chicago Bulls. Be patient. You have players on the roster. It does sometimes it's not gonna like happen right away, but you gotta stick to your guns. You don't have to make these knee jerk reactions. And the Bulls for just not making a trade does make them a winner. And the news that Patrick Williams is coming back, I know excites a lot of Bulls fans. And honestly, like I'm pretty high on Patrick Williams as well. I'm excited to see him back on the court because I think with the way the defense is, with Alex Caruso coming back soon, with Lonzo back coming back soon, adding Patrick Williams, scary sights, man. Scary hours out there for the Chicago Bulls. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. If I had to give a winner, especially with someone we didn't really talk about, the Golden State Warriors. And it's the same reason kind of for what you're talking about. By not making a move, I think they're still winners because they're one of the best teams in the West right now. I think they're on like a 9 game or an 8 game winning streak. Oh no, they lost the other night. But without Draymond Green, they're still producing at a high level and they're contending for a championship when they have James Wiseman on the roster, Moses Moody, Jonathan Kaminga. They've got 3 young guys, so you have the perfect bridge from the current core to the new era of the Golden State Warriors. The fact that you didn't have the knee-jerk reaction, we have to win a championship this year, and you're still able to compete to get all of these young guys. I think that's a W, and I think I like the decision where stick with the young guys, have them develop. We're still good enough to compete for a championship. I do like that, and I'm very happy that the Warriors did not make a trade.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I mean, sometimes the smartest thing to do when you get to these crossroads is just to stand pat, right? One of the smartest things you can do is to look at your team, understand your personnel, understand what you're looking at, and realize that sometimes the best thing to do is stay quiet. They say real G's move in silence, but I think that can also apply to the NBA trade deadline when you have a really solid squad and you don't want to mess with things like chemistry on and off the court. So I gotta agree with you. Golden State's been really solid so far this season. Nothing too drastic that they needed to do
Yeah,
anything.
and especially because there's maybe some pressure from like the fan base saying, "Oh, this is our big chance to get the championship this year. Let's trade some of the young guys, get a legitimate fourth star to maybe like solidify this roster." They didn't do that. I'm actually really happy with that. And of course, with the winners, we also have the Nets finally getting some like more depth and help. The 76ers, the the Indiana Pacers for getting Tyrese Halliburton. There, of course, are the obvious winners as well. But the losers, you gotta talk about the losers. Jalon, do you have any like losers that we really didn't talk about from this like NBA draft? I mean, from the NBA trade deadline. I mean, we talked about the Mavs, we talked about the Blazers. Are there any other teams thinking of?
Um, so in terms of big markets, I think, and again, going to teams that didn't do anything, the Lakers and Knicks, right? I mean, I saw
Those
something
are my
reported
exact
earlier.
two teams. The
Yeah,
exact two
man.
teams
I
I had.
saw a report earlier that apparently there was a trade out there for the Lakers that would have sent Russell Westbrook and Taylor Horton Tucker in that 2027 pick to Houston, and they could have gotten John Wall and gotten Christian Wood as a part of that exchange.
That was a trade. I didn't even see that report.
That was apparently on the table. I'll send you that. I'll send you that in case
Yeah,
you end up clipping this or something like
yeah.
that because like it was one of those reports that came out earlier that it was on the table
Oh
and I
wow.
guess fell through. I don't know if it was because of putting Talon on the table.
Oh
I don't
shut
know if
up.
maybe
I'm done with THT, bro. I'm done
yeah,
with
man.
THT.
I don't even know what could have stopped you from making such an exchange if I'm the Lakers, especially with the fact that like Russ is getting benched. Like at bare minimum, even if you don't play John Wall, I think Christian Wood will at least give you some good minutes at the four next to Anthony Davis or as a backup five in certain lineups or whatever. So I mean, at least with that. So for them to not do anything, everybody's so used to Braun going team obliterator around this time. But I think people just need to realize, man, look, you put the team together. The team got put together using veteran minimums, like a whole bunch of put together contracts. And your two main guys that you really could use is Kendrick Nunn, who might not even play this season with the way his injury seems to continue to flare up, and THT, who is not going to contribute to you guys trying to make a championship run this season or maybe not even in the foreseeable future moving forward. So them not making a move sucks. And then sucks for them. And then in terms of the Knicks, man, bad vibes around the Knicks, man. We talked to to our homie Gen Z Hoops, our homie John that works over there, and he's a Knicks fan, and he's not feeling it. This is one of those seasons where he just kind of feels like it was a fall from grace after being the fourth seed in the East last year to being maybe a play-in team at the peak of
Maybe,
their powers. You know
maybe,
what I mean?
yeah,
So for them to not make any moves, they've got a lot of cooks in the kitchen too. If you look at their guard depth, they have a lot of guys at the guard position, but nobody they fully trust outside of Derrick Rose. Like Kemba Walker was somebody who everybody thought in the offseason, if you're a Knicks fan, could be like the savior. And then he gets benched, and then he comes back and he plays well, and then he comes back and he gets, put into trade rumors again. And it's like, okay, so you guys just don't believe in anybody. Sacramento was one of those teams that I think was associated with our Julius Randle trade last week as being
I
something as a
remember that.
potential
Yeah,
exchange.
yeah,
So like they were trying to blow the team up essentially over the
yeah,
last couple of days. So for them to not do anything, it almost just feels like bad vibes.
yeah. No, those are my exact two teams. Two teams here, the losers. I mean, yeah, we talked about the Mavs and Blazers, but the Lakers not getting anything, nothing, like not a single move, not even something minor, like any sort of shakeup, especially for a LeBron-led team. That just honestly is just a shock. But I think that's just a testament that this roster is not good. No one values anyone really on this roster. And if that deal was on the table, like the one you said earlier, they really should have pulled the trigger. But I don't know what Rob Pelinka's doing at this point. Even like just something, do something, and nothing happened. I know Lakers fans are freaking pissed about that. And then going on to the Knicks, I mean, like you said, they have a glut of guards in that position. You still got Julius Randle, who is fighting with video coordinators out on the sidelines as well. like I mean, you put it the best. Bad vibes all around for the New York Knicks. You just after being on the highest of highs last year, they're bing bonging people left, right, and center. This season, a fall from grace. They are number 12. they're below they're below the Wizards, fam. They're below the Wizards.
That's a vicious representation of what this team looks like at the moment, man. Talking about the
Exactly.
fire sale team that is the Wizards, and the Knicks aren't even in the picture right now.
It's an
That's
absolute mess
vicious.
there, and the fact they didn't even try to make anything, the fact that they traded for freaking Cam Reddish and Tom Thibodeau didn't even want him. This is just a whole mess of a season. We wanted to believe in this team. We wanted to believe New York Knicks basketball was back, but as the Knicks do time and time again, they just seem to, mess it up as always. But yeah, those are all the trade talks. There's a lot to dissect there. Let us know down below what you guys think of the trade news. Anything, let us know down below. Just like get into it because there's a lot of trades that happen, lots of discussion to be had. Before we sign off, I did want to talk about this. The NBA All-Star Draft happened, and the teams were finally assembled. I'm gonna go through the teams right now. Um, Basically how the draft order went. So LeBron had the first pick, started with Giannis, then KD went with Embiid, LeBron went with Curry, then KD went with Morant, then we got DeRozan, Tatum, Jokic, Trey Young, and then Wiggins had to be the final pick for the um for Team KD. On the on LeBron's side, on the bench, he also drafted Luka Doncic, Darius Garland, Chris Paul, Jimmy Butler, Donovan Mitchell, my boy Steady Freddie All Star, Freddie Van Vliet, and James Harden, which we're gonna get into in a little bit. And then as for Team KD, they ended up getting Devin Booker, Cat, Zach LaVine, DeJounte Murray, Chris Middleton, LaMelo Ball, and Rudy Gobert, because who doesn't need defense in the All Star game? Apparently, KD is all about trying to get that defense in the All Star game. Jalen, we're gonna get let's go. Let's go right into the fire. That final pick, freaking LeBron was trying his damn hardest to be as petty as possible to get Kevin Durant to draft James Harden, and it got to the point where the final two picks were James Harden and Rudy Gobert. Kevin Durant was on the clock, and Kevin Durant wants to go with the defense. You go with Rudy Gobert and Harden turns into the last pick of the All-Star draft. Jalon, I said a lot there. What were your thoughts on this? This had me rolling in my seat the entire time.
Man, I mean, I knew the fallout was going to be tough, especially with the way the news was picking up right before the trade. All of the stuff about, Brian Windhorst talking about James Harden basically screaming to get out of there. And then, of course, everything else that came out about the Kyrie dynamic, him not being a fan of apparently he was the only player on the Nets that actually was against the whole part-time player element for Kyrie. That was another report that came out. So there was actually a lot more attention in that locker room involving James Harden's feelings about the team than I think anybody was really letting off until the final straw was pulled, right?
Mhm.
So I think, especially for some festivities like the All-Star game, bad blood had to be really boiling come time to make these draft picks. Because I mean, we even saw in years past, Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook weren't like the best of friends after that, after he chose to go to Golden State. And they played an all-star game, and you would have thought they were homies. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Throwing alley-oops to one another in the whole 9 yards. So for KD to go as far as to not draft him at all with the last option he had, the last pick of the draft,
for
and you picked Rudy?
for defense. Remember, yeah,
Yeah, for defense of all explanations as well. I think his exact quote was that I'm gonna need some rim protection, especially with guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo and LeBron James. I never thought that you would worry about rim defense in a game where we know dudes are gonna be launching it from the logo regularly.
I was
But hey, man, whatever logic allows you to go ahead and pick the anti move, bro. Whatever helps Katie sleep at night, I guess.
okay. Okay. LeBron James knew exactly what was going on, and he made it. He did it for the dramatics. He wanted to see. He wanted to get social media churning. LeBron just has a feel for everything, man. He just has a feel for the landscape of things, and he made this honestly probably the best NBA All Star draft that I've seen. Like ever since they brought this into existence, I absolutely loved every single minute of it. And yeah, I mean, apparently this whole thing happened literally like 15 minutes after the trade. I think according to reports, this happened like 15 minutes after that trade happened. So they asked Katie about it right away, and he's like, "Yo, I'm excited to have these guys onto the team, excited to get to work and stuff like that." But you could tell he was cheesed. He was cheesed,
Yeah.
as Katie is. So that's basically like all you got to say for that. And my only other thing I want to talk about before we sign out is how does LeBron draft the best teams every year? Like looking at both these rosters, it doesn't seem fair, bro. Just look at the starting lineups in general. Like he has one, two, three, four people, including himself, former MVPs, and then DeMar DeRozan, who's having an MVP light type season. Then you go to the to to KD's team, Joel, John Morant, Tatum, Wiggins, and Trey Young, no MVPs, good players. I mean, they're all stars for a reason, but how did LeBron get all the MVPs on one team? I mean, this happens every year too. I feel like. I mean, what do you think of these rosters just in general?
I mean, if we're doing it on paper, I mean, yeah, it's definitely not even close. I mean, I unfortunately have to say that KD might have lost considering he was the one that was forced to take Andrew Wiggins. I mean, he might have lost off rip. But unfortunately, it gets even more controversial as you go further down the line, right? Like based off the drafting order, it seems like he ended up picking up DeJounte Murray before taking Chris Middleton.
No. I saw the draft. Yes, he did. This is all in order. This is all in order.
Yeah, so DeJounte Murray just barely made it. And Chris Middleton was a guy who was selected outright. And remember, when we did our live reaction to it, that was a guy who we thought was questionable. We thought that was
Yeah.
a questionable pick as to whether or not he was an all-star at all, let alone somebody that deserved to be over a handful of the guys who we had discussed maybe having a little bit of a better case. So the fact that he got two of the most controversial guys being Andrew Wiggins and Chris Middleton. He also got both reserves being both like injury reserves being
Yeah.
DeJounte Murray and LaMelo Ball. Like, I guess the most interesting thing about KD's team is he's definitely walking around with a handful of underdogs. You know, Devin Booker's used to being an injury reserve. He was actually picked as a reserve outright this year.
Yeah.
Karl Anthony Towns is in bounce back season mode. You know how I feel about my guy
Yeah.
Zach LaVine. I'm taking him to win the 3-point contest as
Yeah.
well. So, but look, man, especially if we're playing 2K, yeah, man, this one ain't close. This one looks vicious. And KD's not playing, which also makes it worse.
LeBron got Luka Doncic as his first pick off the bench, and then freaking KD started getting some players. Then LeBron added Chris Paul. Then he added Jimmy Butler. Then he added Donovan Mitchell, and then got James Harden by default because KD is a petty guy. Like, he has MVP candidates out of the wazoo, and against a team of underdogs. I guess that's the one thing they have against for them. I mean, they're gonna be playing as underdogs. They're gonna be playing hard no matter what. But man, I have a feeling that Embiid's gonna have to carry this if they want to get a win. Embiid already has his injury issues, but Embiid's gonna have to carry hard on this
Oh,
team, especially with no KD on the roster. My bad, Joel. This is supposed to be an All-Star break. It's not gonna be a break for you, my guy. It's just not gonna be a break for you. So predictions, I say LeBron wins like quite comfortably again this year. Any like quick predictions for this?
oh yeah, I definitely got Team LeBron getting the dub. That's without a question. Now the interesting part about it is, of course, with the Elam ending stuff for the All Star game. Now
Yeah.
that should at least make things a little bit more competitive. But that's another reason why LeBron's team just might win. Giannis Antetokounmpo, he said it as part of the draft picks. Giannis Antetokounmpo was one of the hardest playing All Star game participants in this entire group, maybe in All Star history outside of like
He
Kobe
does.
Bryant,
He does.
KG, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, especially when you factor in the Elam ending fact, like portion of this whole game, yeah, I got Team LeBron, bro. It's looking vicious. Maybe if KD were playing, I would feel a
Maybe
little bit stronger. Watch out for Jason Tatum and Devin Booker though. Both both Kobe Bryant disciples. Kobe Bryant trophy looks extra
it's
clean, look
so nice. It's
extra
so
crispy.
nice. It's
They
so
might want to
nice.
go after the trophy. So maybe they might be a little bit more inspired than we're giving them credit.
No, 100%. That trophy looks ridiculous. And I wouldn't be worried if I'm Team Durant. You got Rudy Gobert. You have enough to stop Giannis. You guys are good. But this is where we're gonna end today's episode. Thank you guys for watching or listening. I'm gonna throw it over to my guy Jalon just to talk about what you got coming up. And so before, of course, heading into the All-Star break, trade deadline stuff, what's going on your side?
Oh yeah, man. So just a lot of work in terms of, like you said beforehand, shouting out the Basketball Genius one page, doing a lot of work in terms of these all-star festivities. I'm gonna make a couple predictions in terms of this team, the three-point shooting contest, dunk contest. I'm gonna rank those guys. Definitely gotta react to all of this trade deadline stuff, right? It took us
Yeah,
all of this time to just go through it in podcast form. Imagine getting to writing it,
yeah,
bro. It's so much more news that's going to come
yeah.
out in the next 24 to 48 hours. So it's going to be really interesting. And then, like I said beforehand, too, definitely about to start trying to go crazy on TikTok. Not only just reacting to all of this, but definitely showing a different side, more energetic side in terms of all this basketball stuff, besides all the analytics stuff you guys hear on the pods.
Yeah, of course. You got to check him out. I'm going to have the descriptions to the Hoop Talk pod, the Basketball Genius stuff, the TikTok, everything will be down in the description. Thank you for coming on last minute once again because we got to talk these trades. It was definitely a fun time, definitely a lot to talk about. But yeah, thank you for coming on once again, Jalon.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Definitely had to had to get into it, bro. You know we were
Had
going to get
to.
it done
We
one
had
way or
to.
another.
We had
Already
to.
knew.
Absolutely have to. And he might make an appearance next week on another episode. There's gonna be it's gonna be that one's gonna be that one's gonna be pretty fun. I can't
Yes,
wait to
sir.
record that one. But yeah, this is what we're getting today's episode. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Remember to show love on all the podcast channels. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you're on YouTube. And remember to follow at TV on Basketball on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for updates on the podcast and for other awesome content that you could check out over there. We're gonna be back next week with another episode. Might record two because it's a special All-Star weekend. Still not 100%, but I'm gonna try my best to do so. And yeah, thank you guys for all the support you're putting on here. And again, talk about the trades, comment section, DM me, whatever you want to do. But there's a lot to talk about. But yeah, this is the end of today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. That's me. This is Jalon. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a fantastic day. Take it easy, guys. Peace.